Extra, extra, reading the issue. Raw news, unapologetic, no tissue. Catch the wave, the flow first certain. Nothing pull you in like a Pittsburgh Current. Free from influence, nothing less than. No flexing, aim for progression. We cover news, politics, art forms, and entertainment that comes in all sources. Pittsburgh, a better alternative.
Good morning, everybody in the whole wide world. This is the okay. This is the Pittsburgh Current Podcast. I'm Pittsburgh Current editor and publisher Charlie Deitch, and we have a fun show today for sure. I think it'll be a great show also, but it will definitely be fun anytime that Allegheny Council person at large, Bethany Hallam, is here. It is always going to be a fun time. Bethany, welcome to the Pittsburgh Current Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Charlie.
Thank you for coming. And I do want to say, though, that today the Pittsburgh Current Podcast is sponsored by Jazz HR. Struggling to hire? Headquartered in the heart of Pittsburgh, Jazz HR helps you find and hire the more qualified candidates faster than ever. And we'll have more on those guys later. So how are you doing, Bethany Hallam, new council person at large? How have things been going since you're swearing in?
It's been a lot.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, everybody told me when I was running for office that campaigning and governing, legislating are completely different things.
Right.
And I just kind of brushed them off, but they were right. So it's the campaigning times 10.
Yeah.
Because you're still campaigning, you're still going to all the events, you're still, shaking hands and kissing babies.
Right.
But now you're also working on policy, which is what I ran to be able to do.
Right.
So.
It's like the awesome engagement, and now you're married, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this guy's gonna be more work than I thought he is.
Exactly like that.
So what kind of challenges, or what's different? Is there anything that sort of took you as maybe you weren't expecting, or that was different than you thought it would be as you took over? What was the biggest sort of culture shock to you?
Well, there was a lot, but
I'm sure.
I'd say the biggest thing is just kind of being more in the public eye now, and having people scrutinize every single thing that I say, that I do, votes that I make. I think I've had one vote so far, and it's already been,
Right.
So, I mean, I guess I expected that. Luckily, I mean, I've had a lot of elected officials who kind of prepped me for this prior, so I'm lucky to have had that. But all the explanation in the world can't prepare you for what it's actually like.
Is there any sort of preparation that can be done to prepare you for actually being thrown into the mix?
No, I mean, don't read Facebook comments. That is like the best advice I got. I did not take the advice.
I was going to say, because you have to, right? You have to read the comments.
Well, you have that little alert on your Facebook app, and you don't want to not look at it.
Right.
And what if it's something that you want to tell someone to go fight back for you?
Right.
About,
Exactly. When you see your name pop up, you're like, oh, so-and-so, maybe I should, but so-and-so doesn't like me. But maybe they've changed their mind. They never change their mind.
They do not change their mind. Yes.
So let's talk about your first vote and bit of controversy.
Oh, yeah.
It was for the presidency of Allegheny County Council. Mm-hmm. So walk me through that a little bit. You apparently made a vote that people aren't happy about.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
So luckily I was prepared for that part.
Yeah.
That was something, again, a piece of advice I had been given, like, you'll never be as popular as you are when you were first elected. Because as soon as you make your first vote, you're already turning some people off. People are never going to agree with everything you do.
Sure.
The hard part was that it was a lot of my hardcore supporters, people who knocked a lot of doors for me, who were always supporting me on social media, and then all of a sudden one vote, and it was like that. Over. Yeah. So I think that it was confusing to a lot of people because they see, myself and Councilwoman Olivia Bennett as being the new progressive voices on council, which we are and which we are going to be. And so they assumed that we were going to vote a certain way. But the reality was that it's not just about who calls themselves a progressive and that's who deserves our vote, right?
Right, yeah.
Or who says that they're going to support certain things. Like, we were diligent in our decision making. We spent weeks leading up to the presidency vote talking, because something that's been important to us is we want to make sure that people know we are a block, right? We share the same values, we're fighting for the same causes. So we have been a team throughout all of this. I mean, throughout the campaign and now being in elected office. Yeah. And so, we talked, a lot of people wanted to be president. It wasn't just the two people that it came down to at the end. And so,
Remind the folks who those were.
Oh, yeah. Paul Klein and Pat Katina were the two that we ended up voting between at the meeting. But, I mean, prior to that, Bob Macy wanted to be president, DeWitt Walton. There was a lot of people who, Nick Futulis, who was the former vice president of council. So there was a lot of people who were interested in the presidency. But at the end of the day, that's who it came down to, those two. And I think the vote ended up being split, 9-6? Because that was another big argument of ours was even if we voted the other way, Pat Katina was still president, right? But really what happened was he presented the best plan to support what our idea was of what we wanted to accomplish on council, right? We wanted to make sure first and foremost that county council was independent of any other branch in county government, specifically of the county executive. That was something that we have talked about since day one of the campaign, right? No more rubber stamp. The other thing we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that progressive legislation had an opportunity to survive, right? We've seen too many times legislation dies in committee, right? And for anybody who doesn't know how it works, the bill gets introduced, the president sends it to a committee, and it can die in the committee if the chair of the committee doesn't allow it out. Right? So we saw that happen with the conversion therapy ban last year. It never even came up for a vote. So President Katina's first order of business was no more bills will die in committee. I won't allow it to happen.
Wow.
So right there, right off the bat.
How do you vote against that?
Exactly. Another thing was proclamations. We said that we wanted to make sure that we weren't wasting council time on just unnecessary proclamations because all the meetings that I'd gone to over the past year, that was all they did.
Yeah, let me tell you, if anybody's ever been to a county council or a Tuesday city council meeting, there are... I probably covered more city council over the years than county council, although every time I go to a county council meeting, there are 75 people in line, either for a proclamation and then for public comment. But, there are proclamations. City council, for example, they start at least a half hour late. And then sometimes proclamations can go an hour or more. And county council also, because you're now dealing with a bigger area of people to honor. And so you have you have this kind of open form, and it's a lot. So what are you guys going to do about that?
And when you have too many, it kind of dilutes the importance of the ones that you do have. I'm not saying at all let's get rid of them, but we don't need to have 20 proclamations every day.
Yeah, and do you have...
It's your 47th birthday. Do you need a county council proclamation for that? Do you know what I mean? I don't understand the relevance of that. So what he said is that we're going to greatly limit the amount of proclamations that we do.
Per meeting or in general?
In general. Yeah. So we were originally talking about, do we have a set number per meeting? But then that doesn't really make sense because what if there's some big events all within a 2-week period and then there's none 2 weeks later. So just in general to kind of limit it and make sure that they have value, that when somebody gets a county council proclamation, they know it means something.
So when you vote and say it's Blawnox Day, goddamn it, it's Blawnox Day and
Blawnox
that's it.
Day, yes.
But one of the things, and again, things sort of run together up here, as you know. But one of the main issues also wasn't it something with the county police review board, which we'll talk about too at length, in your vote for presidency. Yeah. What was that? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it was more their criticism of it, right? So obviously before that was a big issue to myself and Liv Bennett, right? So it's something that we talked about a lot before is we wanted to make sure that the legislation that we had priorities on our list was going to be able to pass depending on who was the president. Councilman Katina openly voted against the legislation that was introduced last year.
Right.
Councilman Klein voted for it. So I think that that's kind of where it brought in a lot
People
of
looked at
confusion.
the face of that.
Exactly. They just saw a yes vote for a piece of legislation we agree with, a no vote for a piece of legislation we agree with. How could you go with the no vote? And the reality is, I think that the current legislation needs changed.
Right.
So the same piece of legislation that was introduced last year that failed was actually just reintroduced at our meeting on Tuesday night. Same legislation as before, nothing's been changed. I've been very vocal about the fact that I am 100% a supporter of a police review board, but I want to make sure that it is an effective piece of legislation.
Right.
It's not just, some ordinance that we're going to pass and then nothing ever comes of it.
Right.
So that's not what we want. And that's what I'm afraid that this current piece of legislation is.
Right.
So I actually just got a position on the Public Safety Committee. Liv Bennett is the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So we're going to be able to work together with the other members of the Public Safety Committee to make sure that we put the best piece of legislation forward, whether it's amending the current legislation that was introduced or whether it's introducing a whole new piece of legislation that actually has the teeth that a police review board needs to have to be effective. It needs subpoena power, cross-examination power, things that aren't included currently.
Right. The president, this is a city council, but he in county council as well. He appoints the committee chairs.
Correct. So he runs the meeting.
Right.
He sets the agenda. He appoints the committee chairs.
Right. So when you look at, and again, I don't know if there were negotiations or whatever, but when you look at what you came away with, which was a promise not to let bills die in committee, and B, Liv Bennett as chair of the committee, which will ultimately send. How can you vote no?
Exactly. Yeah. I am now the chair of the Appointment Review Committee, which is all the appointments in Allegheny County.
Right.
So that's the Health Board, and that's the Port Authority Board, and that's the CCAC Board, and there's so many. Alcosan, Conservation District. There's so many appointed positions all around Allegheny County, and I get to help make sure that the best people are in those positions.
And I actually that's actually a very interesting point you brought up. I want to talk about that. But I was just flashed a note that said that I guess it is official reports are coming out that Mike Turzai, Speaker of the House Mike Turzai, Republican Speaker of the House Mike Turzai, is not seeking re-election.
Is he resigning, though? Because that's different.
That's not out. That's still up in the air.
Okay.
He does have a press conference at 11, and as we have the other Bethany Rue, monitoring this situation. So as soon as we have more, we'll bring that we'll bring that to you.
I'm very excited about that because that's my neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in Sarah Anna Morato's district, but I'm the last street in her district. Mike Turzai's district starts right in my backyard. So that's a lot of my friends and family members and people I've been involved with politically live in that district. Yeah. This is huge.
Yeah,
this is huge. So I don't know if people kind of understand if we can talk about this for a minute.
No, please. I have some thoughts too.
Yeah. So if he resigns versus not seeking re-election, retiring, two super different situations, right? So I don't know if a lot of people realize why that matters. So if he resigns right now, today, or effective tomorrow, or whenever it is, the way that it works is it'll be a vacant seat, and the Republican committee will choose the candidate. Mm-hmm. If he waits till the end of the term and just doesn't seek re-election, then it will be a non-incumbent running against Emily Skopov is the only Democrat declared so far for that race, right? Sure. So it's actually a big difference. Like, is somebody going to be running as a Republican against Emily Skopov? Mm-hmm. I mean, a Republican incumbent against Emily Skopov? Or is it going to be just literally an open seat next year? But the timing of this is really interesting to me because, as you know, petitions start on Tuesday, right? So you're not technically running for office regardless of what anybody's heard about any candidates right now. Nobody is running for office until their petitions are submitted, valid petition signatures. So the fact that he did this right now, this was very calculated, very planned. I mean, he knew what he was doing. Right. So he knew that if he waited too long, another candidate couldn't run next year, because it would be too late for petitions. Right. So it's just so interesting to watch. I can't wait to see.
So you think that ultimately it's going to come out he's probably going to resign at some point?
That's what I think, because then, I mean, either way, I guess he's handpicking the person who will run as his successor, right? You saw State Representative Bill Kortz just did that this week too, or last week, where they handpicked the person, like, this is who I want to take my seat, and they wait till the last minute. Representative Kortz did it the day that you had to announce if you were seeking the Democratic Party's endorsement, right? All of this is very calculated. And that's not how politics are supposed to work. If people have learned anything in Allegheny County over the past few years, unfortunately. But we're working on it.
We are. And we've certainly. I mean, there's such a more well-informed electorate than we had several years ago. I mean, it has to be. I mean, because wins like yours and wins like Sarah's and Summer Lee's, they don't happen unless there's been a change. And those things don't go unnoticed. Obviously, I mean, we've read about these things for since they happened, and even before they happened, and that's why I think we're seeing so many, especially Republican representatives, are stepping down. And I was our news partner, the Pennsylvania Capital Star, pencapital-star.com. They've been tracking these, and I think it was
retirements. That's what they've been
14 and counting. Yeah. Tracking legislative retirement.
Does it have the DR split on that? How many Ds, how many Rs are retiring?
Do you think I would have a news partner that wouldn't have the split, Bethany? God.
Is it Steven?
This is. I think this is it's John Meiser.
Okay.
Steven is actually at the Mike Turzai, I think. So we will have coverage from Steven Caruso here later on today. Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's definitely more Republican,
Mm-hmm.
but there are more Democrats than actually I sort of realized when I was looking at this yesterday.
Yeah. Because it wasn't all Republicans. A lot of the things that I had heard, a lot of the narrative I had heard is that all these Republicans are retiring. Well, yeah, they are, but Democrats are too. And that's kind of the point. Is
Joe
that
Petrarca is retiring, and there's a guy in Erie retiring too, I believe.
And don't forget here, Reed Shaw Courts, right? That's just in Allegheny County. We have 2 retiring.
Right, exactly. And I thought you were talking about Democrats. You said Harry Reed Shaw.
Charlie, was that a joke?
We got so much to talk about.
We do. I can't wait.
Before we continue talking, because I do want to talk about all this stuff, I do want to talk more about our sponsor today. That's Jazz HR. Headquartered in the heart of Pittsburgh, Jazz HR helps you find and hire more qualified candidates faster than ever. With plans starting as low as $39 a month and including best-in-class recruitment tools like interview self-scheduling and candidate texting, Jazz HR is the easiest and most affordable solution to finding your next great hire. Post your job for free today at jazzhr.com. That's www.jazzhr.com. Speaking of job openings,
I use Jazz HR at work.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Bethany Hallam, speaking for Jazz
Client of Jazz HR.
That's great. No, that's great. So we were talking about. So I've actually been, and one thing I do want. I mean, my feelings on Mike Turzai are very, very public and prominent. So it's not like I'm all of a sudden breaking ground today. But
breaking news: Charlie doesn't like Mike Turzai.
Yeah, and Mike. So Mike Turzai has. I really think, like, especially the last 2, maybe. I mean, he's always been problematic in terms of. For example, when he put Daryl Metcalf on the government committee, and so as you said, no substantial Daryl Metcalf
he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, in the last piece I wrote for another publication, he said that he was preventing all Democratic legislation from coming out of committee. And at that time, once that happened, everyone called on Turzai to get rid of Metcalf, just replace him, and. It didn't happen, and I think that was just. And then there was the whole when we were dealing with the medical marijuana situation. Right. Mike Turzai blocked that.
Well, remember, we have an opportunity to get rid of Daryl Metcalf this year.
We do. Yeah, we had Dan Smith on. Go back and watch the interview after this one, of course, with our Dan Smith interview from last week, I believe, or the week before. Sorry, 2 weeks ago. So the opportunity has come back to roost on that one. But Mike Turzai also, he's been losing political clout. So this is a story that I've been working on. I think we've all been working on the Mike Turzai stepping down story. He is retiring effective. Does it have an effective date? So according to the Washington Examiner, he is retiring.
I would say that means after the term.
Yeah.
That'd be my interpretation of that.
I would think so.
Until I see a date. Otherwise, I would assume that retiring meant finishing out my year.
Not stepping down. Yeah, yes. And I really don't see him. No plans to run for the 2022.
Oh, for governor. That's the other rumor, is that he's going to still run for governor in 2022.
I know he got in the race late last time, but I think if I performed like Mike Turzai, I wouldn't run for governor either.
And also a huge thing is just like he is not a friend of public education, right?
Yes.
And that is the wrong side to be on for any. I mean, regardless of what your argument is about charter schools and vouchers and everything, Mike Turzai is the face of anti-public education. You know, so I think that is an issue that he's lost even more people on. You know, regardless, I don't even see that as a partisan issue. Truthfully, I think that a lot of people, regardless of what their political registration is that they're pro public education. And so seeing him just constantly be out there publicly advocating for vouchers and charter schools and less restrictions on charter schools. I don't think that anybody wants to see that. So I agree with you. I think that this is the same as other elected officials who have announced retirement this year, is they saw the writing on the walls. They don't want to be like the people that were beaten by myself and Summer Lee and Sarah Inamorado. They don't want that to go down like that. They want to go out on what they think is a high note, saying, I'm quitting. I'm done. You don't get to beat me. I'm done.
Yeah. And it's not, and it's obviously is that, but also, so one thing I've been working on is areas like McCandless, where, look, if anyone who thinks that a state rep or a state senator, they just concentrate on their job, it's also, in their mind, their job to make sure that they have people installed all over that district. And McCandless is one of those. And over the past 2 election cycles, his people have been soundly beaten in places like McCandless, and there are other municipalities as well. So I think that he not only saw that, he saw Emily Skopoff coming again, who now had name recognition
Right.
as well as a strong candidacy, and just she's a great candidate. But he also saw that, I think it's sometimes it's hard for you to see the writing. Like you can see it, but you don't want to read it, right? You don't want to read it, right? And I think that we're seeing that now, where because it's easy to live in denial up to a point, and then it's just like,
Right.
there's no way that this is going to happen. So so Mike Turzai is retiring. We believe that means at the end of the term.
Are we celebrating?
I'm celebrating.
ready,
Yeah.
Is this a celebratory?
Sure, got some
podcast?
booze around here somewhere. Yeah.
Bethany. No.
Oh, believe me. Let me say this. There's booze around here somewhere. So that news kind of got us off track a little bit, but so back to you, just to kind of close the door on the vote for county council presidency.
Yes.
Again, that I think, while some people really ate your lunch over that, I think that it also
Are still eating
your lunch.
Are, yes. And I'm hungry, so please don't do that.
Do you think people do that without looking at the totality of the situation?
I am positive of that and that's actually the biggest point here is this is not a personal thing. It's
Right.
not I liked Pat better than Paul, right?
Right.
That is not at all what this is about.
Yeah.
Liking one person better than another person. Like this is governing, right? And this is
Right.
making sure that the best person is in place to
Right.
do the best job possible, to
Right.
advance the legislation that we need advanced, to keep us separate from the county
Yeah.
executive. Like that's what this is about.
Right.
And at the end of the day, let's all work together
Right.
to get stuff done. We need 8 votes on council to get anything done.
Right.
We have a 12-3 Democrat-Republican split right now. That is amazing, unheard
Right.
of, right? For countywide. Like that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's take advantage of this and let's get Democrat-focused legislation
Right.
passed, right? Let's make sure that our platforms are pushed forward.
Right.
And so I think that at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I guess I wish that people would have waited to see what comes of this first, as opposed to just being like, you voted for this person instead of this
Right.
person. Wait to see how we legislate. Wait to
Yeah.
see how we vote on legislation, on policy,
Right.
because that's what it's all about. It's not about the people. It's about the legislation that comes out of county council.
Right. And there are the people who voted for you, I would assume, they voted for you because, listen, shaking things up doesn't mean doing what's expected.
Right.
And listen, you said that before you even took office, and then sure enough, you shook things up. And
Day one.
when I saw the vote, I was like, this is interesting. I didn't pass any judgment on it because I knew
Right.
there was some kind of
Right.
game plan involved in that, and so it's very much. I think that people need to. For example, you're chairing the appointments committee.
Yes.
What most people probably don't know is when an appointment comes from the county executive, typically it's just they're swept through.
Right.
There's very little vetting that goes
I
on.
think there's been a couple that have ever not made it.
Right,
through.
correct. Yeah.
That's it.
And I'll even say again, at Pittsburgh City Council, there is at least some level of vetting. I
Right.
mean, and this is one of those ways. If your goal, which you've said it is to sort of be that counterbalance to the county executive, to shake things up a little bit. This is a way to check that, to check those appointments as they come in to, because ideally, look, a county executive or a mayor or a speaker of the House, they're not going to put people in prominent positions that aren't going to help their agenda. Right. So that's probably not something people thought about, but if your goal is to really sort of not be a rubber stamp, that was probably the biggest rubber stamp were these appointments.
I agree.
And
so I think something else that I just noticed different in this situation than in other situations that I've seen is, right, we're 2 young women, myself and Liv Bennett, because it wasn't just me getting, the heat on Facebook. It was Liv as well,
Liv too,
right?
yeah,
It was
yeah.
the 2 of us together, which has been nice that we've had each other to
Right.
support throughout all this, texting each other,
Yeah.
sending screenshots, like we've been dealing with it well together, right? And so I think what's interesting is like we're 2 young women who were just elected to a body that historically is older men. Right. And suddenly all these progressive champions, supporters of ours were dragging us,
Yeah.
So would you have done the same to 2 candidates that you supported that were older men,
Right.
or even just men,
Right.
Are we treated differently? Which, I mean, I know the answer and it's yes.
Right.
Are we treated differently because we are women, right? Is Liv treated differently because she's a black woman? Yes. Am I treated different because I'm a millennial? Yes.
Yeah.
No way would this situation have been the same. Would the same words have been being spoken about us if we were two white men? And I'm sure of that. You know, and anybody who wants to disagree with that, show me an instance where the same exact situation has happened to white male elected officials, right? So it's just very interesting to see when we talk about women running for office and how, you know, there's a lot of great groups in Allegheny County and beyond across the country that are trying to elect young progressive folks, especially women, to office because we're historically underrepresented in office. And so to see that this is the push, well, I'm happy to be able to help people now with those obstacles, the additional obstacles. As we said, it's one thing to campaign and it's one thing to govern, but it's a whole nother thing being a woman, being a young woman, or being a black woman and doing the same thing. It's a different ball game than it is for someone else who would be running. So this is the first example of it. I'm sure it's not the last. Oh no. I'm sure that there's plenty more to come.
Not the last this month. Yeah.
Right. This week.
Who knows? Time left. Yeah. So that's I absolutely agree with you. And the other thing too is when you have people who are true progressives, because and this is watch this awesome segue we're going to do, because there are a lot of Democrats out there who are claiming to be progressive who probably couldn't have spelled the word 2 years ago before all this was going down, and so when you have true progressives coming forward and those folks see what a progressive candidate does, it's like, holy shit, this is progressive. I thought progressive was just saying you were progressive, and
it's just a label you put on your literature when you're knocking the doors.
Right, a couple of the social issues that most people hear about, you know, on in the mainstream media. So we actually have a situation like this brewing. It's something I'm glad you were coming on this week because I wanted to talk to you about this. So in District 30, House District 36, which is covers the South Hills, a lot of the South Hills, Harry Reid Shaw's district, Representative Reid Shaw announced a few weeks ago that he was retiring. But before he was even retiring, he was facing a challenge from Jessica Benham, who we've had on our show as well. Jessica has been running since I think August or September of last year, so she's been on the trail for a while. And so then, as we talked about the writing on the wall, you know, so here, you know, Harry Reid Shaw obviously knows what's happened to other guys in his position when here comes the young progressive woman who's going to put him to task for his record and on issues that, again, most progressives and young voters feel very strongly about. So he announces his retirement, and probably within a couple of weeks. So anyway, this past Sunday, there was another candidate who stepped forward. Her name is Heather Kass, and you can read all about this on PittsburghCurrent.com. And she stepped forward, and she was endorsed by Harry Reid Shaw and at the time, Pittsburgh City Councilor Anthony Coghill. However, after that happened, we discovered that there were several Facebook posts.
Almost instantly.
Yeah. I think it was. I started hearing people started telling me about it, sort of, and then I started receiving some things, and then I started looking and found some other things. So you should definitely check out that story. But very pro-Trump. There were, and again, first of all, as a Democratic and as a progressive, that bothers me. But, you know, I'll allow that. Should that be the end all be all? Well, it depends on where you're. Yeah, no, I agree. But for some, yes, I agree. But for some folks, if they say, well, I don't want to. But yeah, no, I certainly believe if you're calling yourself a progressive voter, a progressive candidate, it's very hard to say that you also support Donald Trump. And
especially, I don't know if you remember when she announced, that she announced, what is the local paper called, some South Hills Chronicle?
Oh, the Southside Reporter.
Southside Reporter, is that what it's called? Yes. So when she announced she put an ad out in the paper, Heather Kass, right? When she announced, she put an ad out in the paper listing her platform positions, right? And it was like, fight the opioid epidemic, you know, like support LGBTQ people,
right?
All these things that sounded like progressive values that actually looked like she had taken them from Jess Benham's website.
Right, exactly.
That's what it looked like.
Exactly.
And so then suddenly within a couple weeks of her even announcing this all started happening.
Yeah, so I'm sure at that point people were really sort of starting to look at it a little bit. And people who knew her and people who had been Facebook friends with her. So this was all sort of bubbling. And then when not only the public announcement was made on Sunday, but when the endorsements came out from Reed Shaw and Coghill, like I said, I'd been hearing about it, but then my phone started really lighting up. And so we got the first bit of stuff that a lot of people got, and I don't know if Jake can put the pictures up or not, but there were, one post, for example, she railed on people that are on public assistance, and that was her "Go Trump" with 10 or 12 exclamation points.
Yeah, so make sure people understand she wasn't just saying Republican-oriented things.
Correct.
She literally typed "Go Trump" in a
and
Facebook
she talked
post.
about, and I don't want to misquote it, but it was basically, I don't think she used the word leeches, but it was something to that nature of lazy. She just certainly used the word lazy in that.
And screw Obamacare.
Oh yeah, screw Obamacare and so forth. And then there was another that was from the Freedom Works, the
Hillary Clinton thing.
Right, the Hillary Clinton. There was a Stop Hillary thing from the Freedom Works, which is a ultra conservative think tank. I think they're funded by the Koch brothers, right? I think. And then
the last two are the things that bothered me the most.
So then there was one that was pro gun. That was what the indication was at first blush, and it's basically an AR-15 rifle dressed up as a unicorn. Looks like a child's toy. Number one, and then there's the comment that says, this is not an AR-15. She identifies as a handheld, blah, blah, self-defense something.
So it was not only a pro-gun post, but also an anti-LGBTQ post at the same time.
Right.
So this is coming from someone who claims to be a progressive champion. Then remember the last one. Well, not probably the last, but the next thing.
Yeah, so the next thing, it's not the last.
No.
So these are things that we uncovered even after the original story came up. So when she interviewed with Chris Potter at WSA, one of the things she pointed out to him, and as you said, it was in her ad, was that she wanted to really fight and work toward, curing or helping the opioid epidemic.
Because this is the worst hit community in Allegheny County.
It is, absolutely.
This is the community that's struggling the hardest with the overdose epidemic that's going on across the country. And so, she said that we needed to be more sympathetic toward addicts. Well, so flashback, there were two posts. One was basically that we're being governed by. She basically put what idiots on a post. Yeah, go ahead. If your community makes needles free,
has needle exchange programs, but bans plastic straws.
But bans plastic straws, you're being governed by idiots.
That's also a crack at the environment too.
Yes, exactly. So please tell me what piece of anything that was said in these comments is progressive.
Right. No.
If anything, I wouldn't even call it conservative Democrat post because we have a lot of dinos in Allegheny County. This is literally Republican talking points.
Right. I mean, and it's literally right, and it's written. And one thing that actually City Councilman Bruce Krause pointed out to me is he said, and you need to look at these on PittsburghCurrent.com. She uses all caps. It was very, as he said, very Trumpian in its presentation, and it really, really was. I mean, it was absolutely the quintessential sort of Donald Trump, Twitter rant. And then there was the last one, which I actually, when you talk about wanting to be more sympathetic toward, and I do want to look this up, so I want to read this one verbatim. When you talk about wanting to be more sympathetic toward addicts, now the needle exchange obviously is bad enough, but when you post, that's another one, and that's another one. Okay. Sorry. This one also was about. Opioid addicts, and this one preaches anything but sympathy toward
people suffering from addiction.
Addiction. Thank you. This is bullshit. Freaking junkies get everything We should just make the drugs legal. Let them OD and less shit in the world. I don't want to hear that I don't know what it is like that people have a sickness. I have been on pain meds for severe health issues for years. I purposely choose to be on the lowest dosage possible and have never become addicted. So give me a break. And Bethany Hallam is starting to get a vein pop.
I did not see this one.
You didn't see this one?
No.
Oh, this was in our last update on Monday night. I am also severely allergic to bees and need to carry these meds, meaning there was an original post about an EpiPen's prices, and I have to pay out the ass while junkies get all their shit for free for fucking years. Grow a set and get clean.
Oh my God!
I thought you saw this. Because I would not have just brought this to you.
No, I'm
cold.
glad that you did. Because I'm pissed.
But I would have shown it to you beforehand. So
no, I had no idea.
So
I was pissed enough about
for those of you that don't know, and I don't know that there are people watching this that probably don't know.
Right.
Bethany Hallam suffered for years from opioid addiction.
10 years.
10 years from opioid addiction. So what I don't even know how to. I mean, what do you?
So first of all, there's a lot of things to unpack about that comment. So the first thing that I would address, just because it was the last thing, is like the EpiPen thing, right?
Yeah.
So that is often brought up in this conversation because it's, oh, addicts get Narcan for free. Why isn't my EpiPen free? Listen, okay? They should both be free.
Right.
Right? So just because your EpiPen is free does not mean in any corner of the world you should be advocating for Narcan not to be, right? More people do not need to suffer. We need less people suffering, okay? So I hate that narrative, okay? Right, you want your EpiPen to be free? Cool, so do I.
Right.
But I also want Narcan to be free, and so should you know?
Right.
So that's the first thing.
Right, stop voting for politicians who take mass amounts of monies from pharmaceutical companies. That's why the EpiPen is
$300 at least, right? Yeah, that is why that is, you know? So that's the first piece of that. The second piece is, and this is also another controversial topic when it comes to, you know, battling the overdose epidemic, is about, you know, prescription painkillers. Right. That's how mine started. It turned into a full-blown heroin addiction after a few years, but it started on pills that were prescribed by my doctor for almost 2 years after knee surgeries, okay? And so the problem is that there are a lot of people in this country especially who need those prescription painkillers, right? So sounds like she's one of them, okay? But don't say, I purposely put myself on the lowest dose because that's what I need. Well, a lot of people need to be on the highest dose because their pain is worse. So this is not what this is about. This is not how we address the overdose epidemic, right? Making needle exchanges more accessible, which there is one there's one in Overbrook, right? There's a prevention point in Overbrook. So making needle exchanges more prevalent, making just services for people more prevalent, having mental health professionals show up when there's a 911 call for somebody who's overdosing or who's, you know, having an episode related to their drug use. There are so many steps. That's two tiny ones, but there are so many steps that we could take to combat this epidemic. But instead, you're going to go on social media and talk all ignorant about things that you don't know. You know your experience. Are you out knocking doors and talking to other people in your community whose loved ones they've lost to this disease? No, it doesn't sound like it, because if you were, you're not going to be talking like that on social media. Where in contrast, Jess Benham has been out for how many months now, and even before that, knocking doors for me and other candidates, knocking doors for herself, talking to people, finding out how to be compassionate towards them because she's listening to them when they talk, as opposed to just running her mouth on social media. So it angers me so much, because if people like this are serving their communities in elected office, how dangerous could that potentially be if this is the narrative that they're using their platform as elected office to spew around? You know, like, I think that comments like that show more than ever why we need to make sure that, you know, we work for the Democrats in the race.
Exactly. and a lot of these posts have been picked up and shared, but this one to me was this was actually one that a source mentioned, helped us find, and it was, you know, that to me was the absolute. I mean, whether you are, take all the rest of it out if you can.
Everything else.
That alone is, because especially when you tell a reporter that you think addicts need to have more sympathy, and then not too long ago you're saying, because I don't think this was a real old one. How
long?
It was 2016.
How can you be an advocate for the people in your community who, like we said, the communities that are struggling the worst with the overdose epidemic right now live in this district.
Right.
Okay. So how can you say that you're going to be an advocate in Harrisburg for those people whenever you're saying they're worthless and they don't deserve any help? They don't. I mean, if anybody who is listening or anybody in the world thinks that anybody wakes up and says, I want to be addicted to opioids today.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know who you've been talking to, because nobody wants that for themselves. Nobody wants that for a loved one. I was just talking yesterday with someone about the fact that most people really don't want to be using, right? They really do not want to be in active addiction. It's just you're so caught up and it consumes your life, and you think this is just how it has to be. So it's about providing services to help people, not making drugs illegal or not criminalizing addiction or not all the things that we're doing right now.
Right.
We need to make sure that we're offering resources, right? And we're spending more health on mental health diagnoses, because in reality, most people who are suffering from addiction are actually dual diagnosed with some sort of mental health diagnosis as well, So this whole narrative that she's trying to push here is not just disgusting, it is dangerous. And people will die because of this if she is elected to office.
And again, if you read this post, and I keep hammering this one home, that's literally what she said should happen to solve the problem. This is freaking junkies. Get everything. We should just make the drugs legal, let them OD, and less shit in the world. So in my opinion, you don't go from that to let's be more sympathetic in 2 years and still not have, there are some things you can't unsay anything.
And don't tell me you had an epiphany about every single thing that you just read, right? You just had 20 epiphanies over the past 2 years and just drastically changed your view of the world. Because these are moral things.
Right.
This isn't about education, right? Unfortunately, it's not. These are moral issues.
Yeah.
That if this is how you feel that people suffering from addiction should die, I have zero sympathy for you.
Yeah.
And I don't care, the same argument about people getting Narcan, like when is enough? Never. Because I know people who have been Narcan once, and they get clean, change their life around. I know people that it took them 20, 30 times of rehab in jail. I'm the perfect example. I went to rehab a handful of times. I went to jail almost a dozen times, and it took all those times for me to get clean. So you can't put a time limit. Some people get clean when they're 15. Some people get clean when they're 70.
Right.
I have no sympathy for people who cannot see things from that point of view.
And also,
sorry, that gets me really worried.
No, I know, and I can see it on your face.
That post.
Like I said, and again, that was one that we did sort of a final write through on Monday night, and that was it was well after the other story had been circulated a ton that we found these, and so it's just been it was, like I said, to me it was the absolute. Not the worst. Yes, the worst, but also the most telling. Not just the worst, but the most telling of
I said, there's more.
Right.
Because before the article came out, Jess is a friend of mine, right? We had been creeping on this girl's social
Sure,
media
of course
since we
heard
the rumors that she was going to be running for the seat. There's more, maybe ones that aren't as telling, like you said. Right. But there's more where that came from. This isn't a couple one-off comments.
Right, and in the totality of the situation, there's. It's all, and I do want to say that we had the update last night. She is not leaving the race as of yet.
Heard.
Yeah, she posted on Facebook last night that she's going to stay in the race, and that it was I guess it was sort of an apology. PittsburghCurrent.com. You can check out. You can read that apology there, as well as you can read the list of questions that I sent her. I was in contact with her originally. When I first saw the post, and we had just a little bit of, she gave me, said contact me. And by that evening when I was going to contact her, everything is sort of blown up. Anthony Coghill had withdrawn his support. We still don't know where Harry Reedshaw stands on that. Again, we're looking into that, if he still supports her, because again, she's staying in the race.
Yeah. So the nice thing about this is elections, right?
Yes.
So the people ultimately get to decide.
Right.
But the first thing that needs to happen is the Democratic committee members in this district need to decide. And that's what I am looking forward to seeing.
And this is, I feel like this is a very well-tuned
How did that
podcast
happen?
today.
Yeah.
But before we talk about that, you like music, don't you, Bethany Hallam?
I love music.
Don't miss a skeptical extravaganza of special significance live with the cast of the popular podcast series, This Is Not Music, A Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, live at the Rex Theater. This is a good show. On January 31st. Uncover the biggest scientific mysteries of the world. Get your tickets today at www.dreskyent.com. www.druskyent.com. When I have a Drusky read, I just assume it's music. But this is we actually promoted this in our last issue. Yeah, it's a great podcast for those of you that have not listened. But yes, but Bethany Hallam likes music. We were able to get to the bottom of that.
Yes, I do like music.
Do you like podcasts? Do you like podcasts?
The Pittsburgh Current Podcast. I like a lot.
Thanks.
But I do really like podcasts. So I have a hard time figuring out when to listen to them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's usually at my computer. So when I'm not in my computer, I haven't yet figured out. Like I know there's some app on your. This is so unmillennial of me, but I know there's some app on my iPhone where I can listen to podcasts. Yeah. Right. So I haven't yet done that, but I do it like when I'm at work. Yeah. Getting work done, I listen to the podcast while I'm there. But
no, I sadly I feel like podcasting is one of those things where it allows us to make bad decisions that aren't going to harm anybody else. I listen to pro wrestling and video gaming podcasts mostly. Yeah, it's
I would have not expected that actually.
Really?
Pro wrestling and video gaming.
Well, so pro wrestling is from like way back, and I was out of it for a while, but then it kind of started coming back, and other like younger millennials that I've worked with, they're a lot of them very much like where they're into wrestling now, and so that kind of got me reintroduced a little bit. And now though, I just listen to like podcast about like wrestling from when I was a kid, like all this old kind of stuff.
Wrestling was cool when I was a kid too, like Triple H and the Undertaker and all that. That's when I was growing up. Yes, but now it's like. It's different. It's all different people now, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, that's my thing. It's like,
but Ronda Rousey is in wrestling now, right? Because I love Ronda Rousey. My boyfriend and I have this conversation all the time. He thinks that he could beat Ronda Rousey in a fight.
Really?
Oh my gosh! And so I thought it was just him. So it turns out most men think that they can beat professional women. Like professional athletes that are women at their sport.
At their sport.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if you saw the video with, it was either Venus or Serena Williams and was going against guys playing tennis. And she like smashed. Right. I mean, she hit it once and she smashed on them. They couldn't go anywhere near it. But my boyfriend is convinced. So Ronda Rousey, if you're listening, please come fight my boyfriend. Yes. Because we have a wager on this. Wow. So I'm hoping we could do like a charity event or something. Like everybody bring your significant others. Let them fight Ronda Rousey. Yes. And raise money for a good cause.
See, the
Pittsburgh Current could be involved.
I would definitely sponsor, but I ain't getting in the ring, that's for sure. And I've met your boyfriend. He doesn't seem punchy to me, but he must have something a little loose if he thinks.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think that it's a guy mentality.
Right. First of all, you'd never touch her. She's so
Oh
fast.
my gosh, she'd have you in seconds.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. But anyways, that's what I think of when I think of wrestling all the time, because I'm thinking now that she's in wrestling, maybe she's out of MMA, maybe she'd be willing to come.
We've been looking to do some events. Maybe we can see if Ronda Rousey wants to come and kick some local ass.
Let me know.
I will. We'll do a celebrity
I'll MC it. That would be great. This would be. It's a great idea. So Ronda, let us know.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I would love to do that. So getting back to the committee stuff, and this is sort of like, I feel like we've been sort of building toward this kind of the whole week. And
this is kind of something that's very close and personal issue to me.
So Heather Kass also, on that day that she announced that she was also going for the Democratic Allegheny County Democratic Party endorsement. Mm-hmm. And so she paid her money. She's now on the list to be endorsed.
It's not cheap.
It's not cheap. I think it's
$2,500
for state reps. And just to sort of fill it out, it's $5,000 for state senators, and it's $10,000 for congressional seats. And so
are people familiar with the endorsement process? Shall we explain
go ahead
them,
give
how
a little,
that works, kind of? So if you're a candidate, you're seeking office, you do not have to apply for the party endorsement, okay? So the Democratic Party, you have to pay a fee to apply to seek the party's endorsement, and then you have to pay another fee if you get the party's endorsement. Right. And then in the general election, if you are the Democrat, regardless of if you got the endorsement in the primary or not, there's only one Democrat left, you have to pay again. So that is 3 fees assessed to you.
The same fee normally?
The same fee 3 times. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So mine was $1,500 for my county council race. I think judges and other countywide candidates were $10,000 too. So, but even more importantly, I don't know if it's more importantly, but statewide candidates, right? They had to pay, I think theirs was $10,000 last year. We had Superior Court race. They had to pay $10,000 to seek it. Wow. And now remember, this is 1 out of 67 counties in the whole state. So if every county were to operate as Allegheny County Democratic Committee does, that's what is that, $670,000?
I don't do math.
$670,000
just
in endorsement fees.
Right.
So the argument is that this money is taking away from money that the candidates could spend to beat Republicans, right? So I think that it's controversial.
It's very controversial, and it has been for years.
And you saw some candidates, like I know Jerry Dickinson is running for Congress.
Yes.
He came out publicly and said, I'm not paying it, and here's why.
Yeah.
There were multiple candidates last year who didn't pay it, too.
And the thing about the Jerry Dickinson thing is interesting. Now, again, congressional, $10,000 for congressional
It's a lot of money.
He has the money. He has the money in his campaign coffers, and he's decided not to pay that. And, it's, number one, it's a lot of money. And number two, you can also see the writing on the wall
I agree.
a lot of times about whether or not you're actually going to get this nomination.
Right.
And so,
but also, even if you know you're, like, for example, I knew
Right.
that there was probably not a chance in hell that I was going to get the nomination. I did not get the endorsement, right? But I got 44% of the vote countywide of committee people, right? And so that kind of made people who were not already paying attention to my race, who kind of, I mean, most people wrote me off, said I had no chance of winning. You hear that often with progressive challengers, right? And so it kind of made people pause and pay attention and be like, okay, this is a real contender. Maybe we should take her seriously. Because again, woman in politics, young woman in politics, hard for people to take you seriously. But so I think that kind of sent a message. But I don't blame Jerry at all, especially when we've seen time and time again elected officials who were not the endorsed Democrats who go on to win their primary and then win their election. I mean, there's some big elected officials just in the area who back in the day even weren't the endorsed candidates. Like I know Michael Lamb had told me a story about when he wasn't the endorsed candidate. I forget if it was for mayor or what it was for. But he wasn't the endorsed candidate, and look where he is now. He's running a pretty awesome campaign for Auditor General. Right? I think Chelsea Wagner was not an endorsed candidate.
That is correct.
So there's a lot of these people who are in very prominent positions.
Bill Peduto's
Bill Peduto, exactly. So there's a lot of prominent elected officials. So this isn't even just a new thing. This isn't just about the progressive challengers. It's just does the endorsement have the weight that it's supposed to have, or that supposedly has, right?
Right. And is the process something that needs to be looked at in terms of, because again, it's a lot of money. B, a lot of people, when they don't go for it, again, in Jerry Dickinson's case, it seems to be as much a philosophical stand as anything else. But there are folks who just were like, I'm not going to get it. Why am I going to play your game? Because if I win, which your endorsement might not help, even if I'm in the endorsement and I lose, that probably isn't going to help me that much unless I put up great numbers like you did, obviously.
Right, but also what a lot of people don't realize is it's January, okay? So the money was due, was it Sunday or something? The money was just due.
Right.
This is very early in the election season, and, in the grand scheme of things, like not... People have been campaigning for months now, but still, this is really early. So to have $25 just chilling that you don't need, to just give to the party, to seek an endorsement. Again, so if you lose the endorsement, you're in a challenge primary, you pay your $2,500 to seek the endorsement as a state rep, and you lose, that $2,500 in theory is now used to help your opponent win the primary.
Right.
Because it's used to print slate cards and different things like that, to support different initiatives to help the endorsed slate win.
Right.
So you just wasted money that you could have used, especially $2,500 in a state rep race. You could buy enough literature to knock your whole district 2 times over.
Right.
You know what I mean? That is a lot of money when we're talking about what it could buy you instead.
Right. And the other thing, if you're a committee person who votes for this, you're not supposed to. I mean, if whoever the endorsed candidate is. We'll talk about this. You're supposed to back that endorsed candidate regardless of whether or not you support that candidate or if you ran against that candidate or whatever. And so we had this happen. I don't know if you heard about this, the Lisa Middleman race for.
Oh, no, tell me,
did you hear about
Charlie?
this? Allegheny County district attorney.
So this is different, though, because this is in the general.
Sure.
In the primary is the only time the endorsement. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
It's very confusing because you actually cannot do that. You can.
But they weren't happy about folks coming out.
For Lisa, because in the general, so the bylaws say, the county bylaws say you must support the endorsed candidate, right? So the endorsements only matter in the primary because after the primary election, you're no longer the endorsed Democrat. You're the Democratic nominee.
And they assume you know who you're going to vote for.
Exactly. So as a committee member, you cannot, as of now, support a non-Democrat. That is the only thing you are actually not allowed to do. But the issue was like when Tehran was running for district attorney, where he was the non-endorsed, or me, or Sarah or Summer or Liv Bennett.
Yeah.
I mean,
go back to Bruce Krause on city council.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so
all
many.
these people. And so committee members I've been a committee member for 6 years now.
Yeah.
And we were always told that you must support the endorsed candidate. So my committee tried to kick me off in 2018 when Sarah Innamorato was running against Dom Costa.
Right.
He was the endorsed candidate. She was not. I was very publicly supporting her. I was knocking doors. I was posting pictures on social media with her. I was very publicly doing it, not hiding it. And they filed, it's called like an ad hoc committee that they do, but like filed charges within the party against me for doing that and tried to remove me.
Right.
And so it turns out you cannot do that. So that's kind of where this argument happens, is people thought that they had to at least seek it, because if they weren't endorsed committee, people couldn't help them.
Right.
But that's not the case. And we proved that, and former solicitor of the party, who's no longer with the party, but the former solicitor of the party made that very clear, that you can do whatever you want in the primary. After the primary, you need to support the Democrat. Right. But even that, I would argue, as we saw with the district attorney's race, is the perfect example of the fact that, but is that always the best candidate? And, I don't even think that answers... I know that answer is not yes. That's not always the best candidate, right? Especially like with a lot of the old school politics of Allegheny County, is a lot of the times the official Democrat in the race isn't the one who stands up most for the Democratic values, our ideals as a Democrat.
Yeah, and this might shock a lot of people, but sometimes people get the nominee just because they've been around a long time.
No way, Charlie.
That's what I hear. I've been around a little bit, and I've seen it happen once.
We wouldn't do that.
I've seen it happen once or 10,000 times in my 20 years around here. And so that's the thing. So then you have the Lisa Middleman campaign that comes up after
a strong campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a strong independent campaign.
Uphill battle from day one as an independent when straight party voting was still around.
Right.
Know?
Yeah, exactly. And we could talk about that. We're not going to be able to talk about that because we're running out of time. But that's a great thing. And the party was not happy that many high profile Democrats came out. And I think you're probably going to see that in the Mike Doyle congressional race. You're going to see that, and I think in several where you're probably going to, depending on what happens in the Jess Benham or the 36th district race with Jess Benham, you may see that there. Now, again, that I think if that happens, I think that there's probably going to be, the silent mutiny or the silent
that's
undercurrents, is just going to blow up in the
but
county
the problem is, like, for people like me, who I'm a Democrat through and through, all my family members are, I grew up that way, like, it's just what I believe in, right? And so I want the Democratic Party to be effective, but I am not going to sit aside and watch it when it supports candidates who aren't, in my eyes, real Democrats, who don't stand up for what we are supposed to value. So I think that that's important, that I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I know I've talked to other people who feel that way, other committee members even, who feel like the Democratic Party that we have right now isn't where we should be. Mm-hmm. And we see the Republican Party is always so unified, right? They raise money as a party and they give it to their candidates. We, the Democratic Party, make our candidates raise money and then give it to the party, right? So it's just kind of like, how do we continue to make sure that the Democratic Party is relevant, not just in Pittsburgh or Allegheny County, but across the country, if we're not willing to come together? We are so fractured. We have the conservative faction. We have, the Democratic Socialist faction. And then we have those people who are somewhat in the middle, right? But those are three factions just within one party, right? Yeah. So we would be so much stronger if we could all just come together, and instead of criticizing the left-wing Democrats and saying that we're the ones that are ruining the party, is it maybe possible that it's the conservative Democrats that are doing that, that are making these endorsements irrelevant, that are putting forth candidates who the people don't feel represent them. I tell people all the time, if you go to the ballot box and you don't see someone that represents what you stand for there, don't vote for them. You run against them. Right? Exactly. So that's what I tell people all the time. But it seems that the party is getting more and more to that lines, that a lot of these candidates just aren't representing the values of their district, let alone the party anymore.
And I think a lot of these people and a lot of these candidates are thinking that eventually this sort of the journey left is going to die out or go away, and they're eventually going to go back to their old ways. But let's look at the Tea Party. Let's look at the alternate. Let's look at the other side of this. You don't hear about the Tea Party now because the Tea Party is now the Republican Party. Correct. And so eventually it's going to happen.
I agree.
It has to happen.
It started.
It has started. Right? It's happening. How long that takes is going to be the question.
Right.
I think we've set a record for the Pittsburgh Current podcast length. If not, we're close. But we have to go a little longer because I want to talk to you about completely non-political story.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about how you saved a young Duck's life during the football season. So it's like a long sort of story of how it got to you.
And it's all Bethany's fault.
Yeah, it's all Bethany
Or
Rue.
is it Jake's fault?
It started with Jake.
Okay.
And then let me get you up to the point where Bethany came into this. So it was the weekend of the Arizona game. Jake Mislivchik, our visuals editor, is on his way to Phoenix to cover the game.
Hi, Jake.
Hi, Jake. Jake gets a text from none other than Duck. What's his last name?
Hodges.
Duck Hodges.
The quarterback.
The quarterback. Well, no, the former quarterback. Duck Hodges.
No, okay.
Duck Hodges. Text Jake through kind of like it was sort of like a connection that was made, and Jake is taking pictures all season.
I send him photos. We send each other.
Yeah, he sends photos.
I send him stuff.
I'm not saying that you listen. Calm down. I know you know Duck Hodges.
I'm trying to elaborate.
I know.
You out.
So it's basically it was the special. What was that called? The cleats. It was my cleats,
cause,
my
my
claws. Yeah, my claws.
My claws.
My claws, my cleats, my
cleats,
claws.
Where they paint on them, like
Yes.
they pick a foundation that they're going to raise money for, and then they have an artist who paints on the cleats. Like, his were really cool, actually.
Yeah. Oh, how would you know? We're gonna get to that.
I know? Sorry.
So what Duck wanted was for someone to bring Jake his shoes. However, Jake was getting on a plane soon, so that didn't work out. So Jake then relayed to Bethany Rue, the associate publisher of the Pittsburgh Current, about what happened, and Bethany Rue knew that Bethany Hallam had not yet left for Arizona, and that was meant. So then Bethany contacted you. Jay contacted Duck, and then so tell me about
there's so
how
much
this.
more to this.
Well, yeah, go ahead, take
so,
up.
Like Bethany's full of shit a lot.
Right.
Know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So I knew that she was in Arizona because she posted a picture, and that's how she found out I was going, because I commented and I was like, "Hey, me and George, my boyfriend, we're coming down.
Yeah.
Like, let's have fun, right?"
Yeah. And you knew Bethany was already relaxing.
I saw. Yes. So I saw that. So that's how she even knew that I was coming down, right?
Right.
And so I'm taking this local government academy class for newly elected officials. So I'm sitting in this room with a bunch of people who most of them don't really give a shit about politics at all, okay? Unfortunately, but I'm sitting there and I get a text from Bethany saying, "Hey, have you left yet? Duck forgot his cleats." And I'm like, "Okay, Bethany, how much have you been drinking? It's like 11 a.m., right? And so I'm like so then I'm freaking out and I'm showing people who are sitting, beside me in this class, like, "Oh my God, like she wants me to take Duck Hodges' cleats." And everybody's like, "Who's Duck Hodges?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh God, this isn't the place to tell." So I start texting my boyfriend. He also thinks that I'm completely full of it. And so then Bethany's like, "Can I give him your number?" She's like, "Text Jake," or so. I forget what happened. And then suddenly I get a text and it says, "Hey, this is Devlin Hodges. How are you doing?" And I'm like, so then I think it's Bethany or Jake like pranking me, So I'm taking screenshots, sending them to my boyfriend. He still thinks it's like
we went out and got burner phones.
Everybody got burner phones.
I got a track phone.
Yeah, because you guys know, like, I'm a big Yinzer, right?
You are.
This is like my dream come true, Like, I've always wanted to meet him.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I'm like, he's like, "Yeah, can my roommate bring the cleats over to your house?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Just expecting that Bethany's gonna FaceTime me and tell me it was all ruse.
Right.
You know what I mean? So then George gets home from work. I'm still at my class, and he says that a guy knocks on the door, and he has a box with cleats in it. He's like, "Hey, I'm Devlin's roommate. Like, are you George? Are you gonna take these down?"
Wow.
So then George finally believed me, comes to pick me up, and was like, "Guess what I have?" And like had the cleats in a box. It was so cool. So then I put them in a special backpack. Like, I have them wrapped in the bubble wrap. Like, Duck texts me. He's like, "Don't worry, you can take them out of the box," because I was trying to figure out how to take them in this big box in my luggage that I already had packed, ready to go. Mm-hmm. And so I'm carrying them. I'm like holding them.
Right. So you
taking care of them.
Carry on, right?
If I mess this up and the Steelers lose the game, it's my fault.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't even trying to tell anybody about it until after the game was over, like, just in case.
Yeah.
And so then we won, and then it was all exciting, and then I had this great story to tell, and nobody believed me.
I'll pull up the picture on the screen now.
Yeah,
yes,
look
photo
at that
proof.
picture. So that's my boyfriend on the left, and then me, and And then that's Doc. And then, that's my friend Tommy who lives in Phoenix.
Yeah.
So he was picking us up from the airport. And I tell him, hey, we got to stop at the Stillers Resort because we have to give Duck Hodges his cleats. And so he's from Pittsburgh, right? So he's, of course, like, okay, Bethany. I haven't seen him in 10 years.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this kid in 10 years. And I show up and I'm like, let's go meet Duck Hodges.
He's like, just give me the gas money. You don't have to pull this bullshit.
Yeah.
So he did not believe me until literally that picture was taken that we pulled up and Duck was there. And he was just like a regular guy.
Yeah.
He was so cool. He like spent time with us.
That's
he was
awesome.
like, oh, you guys want a picture? I was like, I didn't even think to ask it because I was so nervous and so excited.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. And it's all because of Jake and Bethany. So.
And that was the apex of Duck's career.
It was the apex of mine so far as well.
Because I, at any point did you think that we went to the extremes of actually painting up some shoes?
No. Once I saw the shoes, I believed it. But completely honest, up until the point that the shoes were actually at my house, I totally thought Bethany was messing with me because I knew that her and Jake both had the same sense of humor. They both knew that I would buy it. Like I truthfully thought it was a coordinated campaign to just like mess with me. Yeah. But
and then I think Jake texted me and I think he said, Bethany's taking the shoes. And I'm like, I thought Bethany was already in Phoenix.
Had shoes.
Or I thought Bethany was already in Phoenix. And he said, no, Bethany Hallam. And I said, you know what? I was working on the issue. I'm like, you just got to explain this to me on Monday because this is too much for me to take in while I'm trying to lay out pages. So, yeah, it was.
And
so
then they won.
Really cool. Yeah, they won.
The Steelers won. Me and Bethany had fun in Arizona.
Yeah, and then a week later, Duck was.
I know. I was at that game too.
Unseated, were you?
I was in. We went out to New Jersey for the
New York game.
Yeah. So driving home 6.5 hours after a loss like that. Yeah.
Do you just try and like? Oh, you remember that time we had Duck shoes and we flew them down there? That was those were good times.
The apex of our
career.
Those
were the apex of our career. Bethany Hallam, this is the apex of our podcast. No, that's the end.
This is the
finale.
End. The apex was somewhere in the
middle. Somewhere in the middle, I think. Yeah. I'm not a writer or anything. I don't use words. I do want to thank our sponsor today, Jazz HR. Headquartered in the heart of Pittsburgh, Jazz HR helps you find and hire more qualified candidates faster than ever. www.jazzhr.com. www.jazzhr.com. Bethany, thank you for coming by today. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us on the Pittsburgh Current Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Giving Pittsburgh a better alternative. Giving Pittsburgh a better alternative. Yeah. Extra, reading the issue. Raw news, unapologetic, no tissue. Catch the wave, the flow first certain. Nothing pull you in like a Pittsburgh.